Good day. Always good to be with you, even in the heat of the summer. Year goes along, and there's just so much happening that takes up our senses, so to speak, and reinvigorates us or causes us to renew our lives, because things are different, and change is very important, and being adaptable to new situations, like the changes, the seasons of the year. In the first reading of Jeremiah, the church doesn't really tell us why they're all upset at Jeremiah. I think the reason why is the point is so not so much the reason why they're upset at Jeremiah as the fact that they're at loggerheads with one another. It gives us, it's sort of a forward preface, rather, before we come to the gospel reading, where we have this confrontational style that the Lord introduces. And he's really saying, the church is saying here, by placing this reading here, is that God's ways are not our ways. And that at times, God will confront us. Because Jeremiah was on God's side. The authorities were not. They were going in another direction. Israel at the time, Judah at the time, was going off in a very corrupt way against the practices that God, Yahweh, wanted the Jewish people to have. And instead they had become idolaters, and they had embraced paganism. To get right on to that rather difficult gospel reading, Luke chapter 12, verses 49 to 53. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on earth? No, I tell you, rather division." Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is to harken back to Christmas time, where it says the angels sing out peace to men of good will. I think the point here is there are men here, people here, who are not of good will, and we are not at peace with them. What does fire mean? It means we're going to take on anything that is against God's will. It is not peace to be at peace with the devil. It is never peace to compromise with anything but being 100% true to God's will, God's way. Life is meant to be a daily struggle because we're in a world that is at odds with what God wants of us. It's such a daily struggle, so at times it's a war. A war against the devil, against the secular forces of this world that want to do without God, that want to replace God with poll numbers, with the will of the legislators, and on and on. But God is simply put to one side and looked upon as somebody who's far away out there in the sky, and we will find our own way on our own without his help. And then also we're at war struggling with our own self-serving tendencies that each one of us can have. So life can be a real struggle. It is a real struggle. Fire is to take a strong stand for God. That such a strong stand that at times our stand for God's will can alienate us from the people around us. We want us to be people that if we have religion, it's fine, as long as we go and practice it in some corner, do it in private, and keep it away from disturbing the general will of the populace who wants to go about its own way. To be different to such a point that we're out of the mainstream arias. That's what God calls us to. Because we are, so to speak, like Jeremiah, who speaks what God wants his thoughts to be said, what God's thoughts are. We will become enemies of the establishment, enemies of the society, who want us to shut up and go off and just be a group separate from the rest of society. But we cannot. We must announce to the world what the Lord wants to us. If they reject the Lord, they reject the Lord. But we are not to be people who are silent, to go off and do what we do quietly. When it comes to following God's will, there could be no compromise. In that sense, there could be no peace. We will stand for God. Whatever God wants, whatever God's truth is, and that's the only truth, that's what we stand for. The only true peace is to be at one with God's will. In the second reading, letter to Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. Persevere in ridding yourselves of every taint of sin, so that we're true to the Lord. Do not grow weary or lose heart in your struggle against sin. Life is meant to be a struggle. It's not going to be peaceful and totally pleasant. But there are going to be difficult times as we struggle against sin. Sinners always oppose us. Yeah, because we have a point of view that's different from theirs and disturbs them. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Dear Lord, help us to always be true to you, to nothing else but to you. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus as we race to the finish line to embrace him. Endure to the end. Be faithful each and every day to the one who is always faithful to us. God be praised and be blessed at all times.